Good morning, everyone. My name is Joe Pallett. I'm the incoming chair of the Beacon Council. I'm standing in on behalf of Alan Becker, who is traveling this morning. I want to welcome everyone to another full access breakfast here at the Beacon Council. I want to thank especially our sponsors for this morning's program, Citibank, the Miami Herald, and Hotel Sofitel. As those of you who come to our breakfasts each month know that Hotel Sofitel puts out a great spread for us all. Before introducing today's speaker, I want to welcome to the podium Jane Abbas, who is the United Way Board Chair. This morning, the United Way Board and the Beacon Council joined forces to make this very important presentation happen. And we're very pleased to have Ms. Abbas join us for a few introductory remarks.
Thank you. Good morning. On behalf of United Way, welcome to this morning's Beacon Council meeting. Joe and Frank, thank you so much for hosting this morning's meeting and allowing us to join in. Our United Way board had planned its own meeting for today, but when we learned of this meeting, we thought joining forces would save all of us some valuable time. We also have about 20 United Way board members that are joining us by phone. So good morning. Good morning. Good morning. We're here today to demonstrate our support of Miami-Dade County Public Schools' $1.2 billion general obligation bond and to learn firsthand from the superintendent how these funds will be used to renovate facilities, update technology, build school replacements, expand student capacity, and enhance facility safety. As you know, education is a top priority for our United Way. A good education leads to better jobs, better health, and better quality of life. Numerous studies have concluded that students in substandard school buildings without technological capabilities perform at lower levels than students in newer functional buildings. Mr. Superintendent, we want you to know that you can count on us and count on our support for November 6th. We look forward to helping the district garner support for this critical issue that'll benefit our students and our communities for generations to come. I'd also like to draw your attention to another important way, as a community, we can help improve education. At your places is a flyer about United Way's Reading Pals program. Please read it, sign up, and encourage others to do so. Thank you so much. Superintendent?
Thank you, Jane, and thank you again to the United Way. So I'm very pleased to introduce today's speaker, Alberto Carvalho, Superintendent of Miami-Dade Public Schools, which is the fourth largest school district in the United States. He's here this morning to speak to us about the proposal to extend the $1.2 billion in construction bonds and the importance of education in the community-wide One Community, One Goal effort. Superintendent Carvalho is a nationally recognized expert in education reform and finance, as well as an outspoken advocate for the high-quality education for all of our students. He's been selected to lead statewide committees charged with charting the future of public education in Florida. He successfully chaired the governor's Race to the Top working group, which led to Florida's successful bid for funding $700 million for Florida schools. He was tapped as chair of the Florida Task Force for Education Excellence, which is charged with crafting the framework for the reform efforts driven by the Race to the Top. In 2010, Superintendent Carvalho was recognized by the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce as the Visionary Leader of the Year. In 2011, he was named one of the top 10 tech-savvy superintendents in the United States by eSchool News and was awarded the 2011 E.C. Silva Community Builder Award by the United Way of Dade County, Miami-Dade. Under his leadership, our public schools have been selected as one of the 4 finalists for the national prestigious Broad Prize for Urban Education, and he's the president of the Association of Latino Administrators. Superintendent Carvalho is the only superintendent in the country who is the self-appointed principal of 2 award-winning schools, the Primary Learning Center and iPrep Academy, and continues teaching physics in selected high schools across the county. He's often featured in CNN, NBC, the New York Times, the Christian Science Monitor, and Nightly Business Report. We're going to welcome Superintendent Alberto Carvalho, who will give us some of his thoughts, but we're also going to save some time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. Superintendent. Thank you.
cautious about the applause up front. Is this on? Yeah, it is, great. Always cautious about the applause up front because you really don't know what I'm going to say yet. You may not necessarily like it. So this mic is for the TV. I should speak still from here. Does that make sense? Is this active?
Yes, I think it is.
I'd prefer not to speak perfect from behind the podium. What I'd like to do is really restrict my comments maybe to 15, 20 minutes to allow more time for you to engage me in comments and certainly questions. And what I'd like to do, to begin with, number one, thank you so much, Jane, for agreeing to co-host this alongside the Beacon Council. The work that the United Way does in this community, particularly on behalf of children, is invaluable. For every $1 contributed to the United Way, there are $7 of reinvestment back into public schools, its children, and the parents of our kids. So thank you so much for your continued efforts on behalf of our community. And as far as the Beacon Council is concerned, I can tell you one thing. We have been at the table at the very beginning, from the very beginning, in designing the One Community, One Goal 2.0. And in fact, we've taken it one step further. Our reform efforts in Miami-Dade are now being oriented by the results of that study. So there are certain key industries that now inform the reform efforts, particularly in secondary schools, high schools, as we develop career academies to represent the body of work necessary to educate children, young men and women, with a critical skill set to navigate a knowledge-based economy, but with regional peculiarities specific to Miami-Dade. This is about the empowerment of community through education to elevate the quality of life in Miami-Dade. For me to even have a right to address you and pitch to you in an honest way the need for this $1.2 billion bond, I have to take you back 4 years and perhaps take you through this journey of very hard work during very tough times for all of us. None of us had ever lived through an economic recession, the likes of which we've lived over the past 4 to 5 years. And that's been my journey as superintendent. I did not have the luxury of state increases for public education during any one of the years I've been superintendent. But arguably, we can say that we have not only done more with less, but in fact done better with less. And I think that's the distinction between good organizations, public or private, and the rest. So I'd like to begin by actually tell you a funny story. Before I came here, I tried to go to a school. Every single day or every week, I got to be connected to kids, to teachers, to the community. And I decided to stop by one of the smallest elementary schools, Southside Elementary, just around the corner. As I stopped by, I walked in, kids were just congregating into their classrooms. This one little boy, about, itty-bitty sized human being, about this big, really tiny. I mean, he was young, but he was a tiny, young little boy. Looks up at me and says, "Look, it's the weatherman. You look much taller on TV." There's nothing like Starbucks and a humbling experience from the mouth of a 3-foot-tall little human being. And that's what makes what I do special every single day. Let me take you back to about 4 years ago and speak, to begin with, about 3 levels of bankruptcy that I believe our school system was facing back in 2008 and certainly a number of years prior. And I think that's a necessary conversation for me to earn credibility as far as me then asking you to support this bond referendum. And the levels of bankruptcy that the district was facing 4 years ago centered around 3 areas. Certainly financial bankruptcy, academic bankruptcy, and I know my board gets very nervous when I say this, ethical, if not moral bankruptcy, and we have to admit to that. Financial because as we were entering as a nation, as a community, the worst recession of our lifetime, the district was actually faring worse than most. Worse than most school districts, worse than most governmental institutions and private sector entities in Miami-Dade. To protect what was then a $5.5 billion budget, we had barely $4 million in the bank. Our healthcare program was scheduled to increase in cost by $73 million. We had an out-of-control administrative body that continued to spend. It was bloated. We had no fewer than about 20 people that earned salaries close to $200,000. We had acrimony between organized labor and management, and the board. So much so that I think the best show in town could be characterized once a month on the Wednesday afternoon during the televised school board meetings. In fact, to fix the budget, I thought initially I could move the school board meeting coverage to pay-per-view, and people actually would pay to watch it because it was really good entertainment. People often come up to me and say, it's not as fun anymore to watch the board meetings, and I like it that way. From an academic perspective, I can tell you that inasmuch as we celebrated the accomplishments of our district every single year, the story that wasn't told to you was that in a lot of our high schools, 50% of the kids were not graduating. In a lot of our high schools, 91% of the students were reading, writing, and computing below grade level. In fact, in some cases, 4 to 5 years below grade level. And we were under the threat of shutdown of 9 schools on the basis of performance. Because for the previous 4 to 5 years, every one of those 9 schools had never produced anything more than a D or an F. And we have to be really honest about this. Every one of those schools was in a high poverty area, the vast majority in African American communities. What are we saying to our community? What are we saying to these kids, to their parents? What are we admitting to ourselves if we accept that as our legacy? And by the way, this was not something that was peculiar and specific to the previous 4 to 5 years. This is something that's been going on for the previous 20 or 30, or for as long as there was an accountability system that somehow attempted to capture the aptitude, the academic performance of these students. You and I know that if you want to condemn the child today to a life of poverty, don't educate him or her. There was a vicious cycle that we needed to break. And the last, as my board member and future board member just walked in, was the issue. We've just been joined by board member Carlos Carvalho and board member-elect Susie Castillo. The issue that I was hoping they wouldn't walk in until I finished talking about was the issue of ethical bankruptcy. Look, any system that allows its budget to dictate its values and principles is not a good system. And unfortunately, 4, 5, 6 years ago, we were experiencing that at the school board. Times were tough, but no matter how tough, the economic conditions around an organization cannot define or redefine that organization's values. You cannot abandon your values because times are tough. And we were seeing that. The fact that teachers were being laid off, the fact that elective programs were being downsized or eliminated because of economic conditions was a reality in place then that we had to reverse. So what did we do very quickly? Well, on a financial aspect, number one, I did the most important thing. I created a Superintendent's Business Advisory Council. A number of you who are here today are on that council. I know Jack Lowe is, I know Harv Mogul is. Why? Because the tough measures we needed to adopt to fix the budget needed to be backed up by people with real heft in our community. Still with a very political board back then, doing the right thing would be incredibly tough because overcoming the political difficulties that this would present would be incredibly tough. We reduced administration, this is a staggering percentage, by 58% within the first 2 years, with 50% of the administrators that used to work downtown no longer working downtown. Now, these were all the people, some of them good, some of them awful. The awful ones we terminated. The okay ones, and even good ones, who used to tell me they loved kids, they joined education because they loved kids, I actually invite them to go love kids closer to where the kids actually were, in schools. And we moved dramatically over 1,000 people from central office into downtown. We shaved administrative spending by 58% and reduced the number of individuals who were earning 100,000 plus salaries. And I know that's a red herring number, but it's still valid during tough times, from close to 800 to about 360. Incredible number. Now, I'm not here on a political campaign, but I urge you to engage in comparisons, even within our own community, with other governmental institutions. When you look at administrative spending, the ratio of administrative spending to critical services, in our example is education, or the number of individuals earning a certain level of salary. We need to ask ourselves, is that legitimate? and is the way that we are taxing and the spread of the millage across all government institutions in our community. Is it fair? Is it equitable? Are we in fact getting what we were promised? In addition to that, as far as the healthcare program, which is the second largest expenditure in our institution, when 85% of our funds are used in hiring teachers and counselors and principals, was scheduled to increase by $73 million. We fired that insurance company, we redesigned the plan, there was a cost share with the employees, and we saved $100 million. The only institution that I know of that size in the country to be able to in fact reduce health care costs in one single year. Over this time period, since 2008 to now, at a time when many organizations, public and private, saw their credit ratings in fact being downgraded, our credit rating actually went up. We went from negative outlook to positive outlook, even though we lost $2 billion in potential revenue. As far as the academic side of the house, 9 schools, and in some schools, graduation rates of 50% or less, particularly disadvantaged communities, poor kids, regardless of race. Well, here's one thing I know. The only thing that matters in schools is the quality of leader and the quality of the teacher. And yes, caring communities and involved parents are important, but I can't control that. So rather than blaming what I can't control, which a lot of folks who do what we do actually engage in that, or it's the fault of the kids or the parents are not engaged, guess what? I can't trade out the kids. This is not a football team. And I cannot trade out the parents, but I can trade out the teachers and the leaders. And yes, it was not easy, but by now, 3.5 years into this work, I have either demoted, promoted, fired 64% of all principals in Miami-Dade in 3.5 years. So when you look at the surge of performance in our schools, there's a reason for that. As far as teachers are concerned, even though we're proud of the fact that as we manage our budget, every year reducing the property tax rate for 4 years in a row, never ever firing a single teacher for economic reasons. But that is not to say that we rehired every single teacher every year. Performance has been a driver. And we have not extended contracts to roughly 6,000 teachers on the basis of performance. You did not read that in the headline in the paper. It's not become national story because we're not doing it for ourselves. So if you want to be a martyr of education and walk around or fly around with a big S on your chest, you proclaim that accomplishment, that you're happy that you fired teachers for performance. If you really care about the kids, you do it silently. You don't create a community disruption. In addition to that, the 9 schools that were threatened with a shutdown by the state, we replaced them with investment with Teach for America teachers and City Year Corps members, and I know City Year is here today. Bridging the gap, providing interventionists in a classroom. 3.5 years later, folks, for the second year in a row, I'm here to tell you there will not be a single senior high school in Miami F-rated. In fact, every one of the 9 schools that were threatened with a shutdown, those schools that had never been anything more than a D or an F, will be an A or a B this year. Yes, Edison Senior, remember Edison? You have my guarantee. Edison Senior will be an A. Jackson Senior will be an A. Northwestern will be a B or an A. Norland Senior will be an A. When in the history of our community have we seen that happen? Now, I'm leaving out a lot of great schools. I know there are parents from Palmetto Senior High School, but that school has always been an A. The remarkable thing is with the increased standards, and I support the ramping up of standards because the economy is not slowing down, and I'm keenly aware that for our students, not only to navigate, but in fact outcompete their international counterparts, they need to have a powerhouse of skill sets. And by the way, will sets. It's not just academic adequacies, it's also personal adequacies, as simple as, lift up your pants and know how to shake somebody's hand and look them in the eye respectfully, but also civic adequacy, how to navigate very ably the rules of society. And we teach all of that in these schools. But the fact that we moved these 9 schools in a very short period of time, from despair into success, has been remarkable. but it's been tough. Yes, we had to fire all 9 principals, and I did that within 2 weeks of being superintendent. And then we had to replace vast numbers of those teachers in those schools. If year after year, 90% of your students did not make gains, there's something wrong. You cannot say it's poverty or language. I understand that. I was poor and I didn't come to this country speaking English. I've done all right. I'm even doing okay with the English. So we recognize it, we provide assistance, we understand, but it cannot be an insurmountable excuse. Cannot. So we reject it. So schools like Holmes Elementary, where 64% of the teachers are TFA teachers, made a difference. Schools like Edison, where we replaced virtually 80% of the teachers, has made a difference. If you cannot teach kids, you should not be a teacher, period. The same rules that apply to the private sector must apply to us, taking into account respectfully, yes, some of the human conditions that our kids face. As far as graduation rates are concerned, one of the most impressive, as far as I'm aware, gains at the national level. Certainly in high-poverty high schools, where the graduation rates were at 50 to 60%, with some as low as 45%, such as Edison Senior High School, we increased the graduation rate as a district to within 1.5 points from the state, even though the state is 2/3 wealthier than Miami-Dade, and 1/3 its diversity. We increased it by double digits in 3 years alone. And in those underserved communities, the increases were staggering. So if I were to tell you that the graduation rate at Norland or Booker T. Washington or Jackson are at the state average right now, in some cases these schools are posting graduation rates of 85% when the state's graduation rate is 80. Ours is 78.5. Those are dramatic improvements and increases. And as far as the last level of bankruptcy, the ethical, if not moral bankruptcy, this has to do with the fact that a board that's not united, a board that does not recognize the moral imperative of doing what's right for kids every single day and protecting teachers and educational programs and lowering tax rates as its priority, is a board that's not aligned with ethical behavior. And when that happens, when there's a vacuum of leadership, when there's less than a union in the board, what you see is bickering, is infighting. And 4 years ago, that was the case. And so if you're fighting, you cannot necessarily be, if you're fighting each other, you cannot be fighting for a single cause. And that's what's changed. So for the past 4 years, we've stabilized the finances and improved them at a time of incredible funding loss. In fact, we increased our reserves by over 3,000%. We are in our strongest financial condition at a time when funding is at the lowest level. We are operating a school system in 2012 with funding levels that you have to go back 12 years to match. 12 years. We improved academic performance, improved graduation, saved every one of those schools, and in so doing, not only did we outdo ourselves, we outdid America. As it was said, we are finalists for the equivalent of the Nobel Prize in education, urban education in America, the Broad Prize. So we're not a flash in a pan experiment. In fact, even if we didn't win the Broad Prize, and it's going to be announced in New York in October, I would be disappointed, but we'd still be able to say we are the only school system in America to not just peak once and then sunset into nothingness, but to actually sustain at the highest possible national level a demonstration of performance unmatched by any other district in the country. Not by New York, Chicago, LA, not by Broward anymore. In fact, our data is more powerful than Broward's. Not by Hillsborough County, the darling of the state. Not by any other large district in the country. Our African American students, our Hispanic students outperformed theirs, and we have a lot more of them. In fact, in a community of students where Hispanic students are 64% of the total population, our Hispanic students are the highest performing Hispanic kids in the country. Our African American, in terms of College Board, the AP performance. Our African American students out of 15,000 school systems in America are the 7th highest performers. Now, I know you don't read this in the Miami Herald all the time, even though I have to say, I am thankful even for the media coverage of the evolution of our work. It's been accurate. It's been transparent. Why do I tell you all of this? It's because I don't think I would be within my right to even ask you to consider bonds for schools if we had not demonstrated a number of things. Number one, we're good stewards of your investment. 2, we can be trusted with educating your kids. 3, we're about serious business, and there is no room in this body of work to entertain political bickering. I think the record is solid. I think the time is now. So why go for the bond? For the past 20 years, folks who have done what I've done have talked about the incredible need of our schools. In fact, folks before me have allowed it to get to a point where the cost of maintaining, renovating, and replacing some schools in our community has gotten to a $1.75 billion liability. Enough is enough. Enough talk about the problem. Let's have a community conversation about the solution. The time is now, the time is here, the need is here, and our solution is a community partnership. And by the way, if we don't do this, the problem is still going to be there. So we have to do this. We're not bringing this about as a recommendation to the board or even the community without exploring every other option. There are no other options. There is zero probability that the federal government, who is in constant paralysis, you may have noticed, will make a dramatic investment in America's infrastructure, particularly schools. For the past 3 years, the state, Tallahassee, has stopped funding physical needs in public schools. Whether you agree with it or not, and this is not my issue, they have diverted all of their capital investment towards charter schools, the so-called PICO funds. Folks ask me, how about the lottery money? Great question. We receive currently $0 into Miami-Dade County Public Schools from lottery revenues. They go 100% into bright futures. And there's a reason for that. I mean, we should celebrate. More and more kids are eligible. They're consuming the money. Receipts are down. And yes, there are some monies provided to school performance, but they don't come to the system. They go directly as bonus, out the door. Why now? Look, number one, the need is there. I do not want to relive some of the tragedies or near tragedies that we faced over the past 3 years. I will never forget March 2nd, 2010, when my staff brought me a safety report that detailed the near collapsing conditions at North Dade Middle School. The building was at risk of collapsing. Overnight, we moved the kids to a faraway school. We cannot risk that. We cannot risk the fact that there are other schools, maybe not as dramatic as the condition in North Dade Middle, but when 50% of our schools were built during the Eisenhower years, they cannot be modern. There got to be safety deficiencies. There certainly cannot be any guarantee of technology equity across all zip codes in Miami-Dade. And as Jane clearly said, the quality of the environment of our schools, the quality of the classroom itself, the building, the appeal, the technology, deeply influence how kids learn. Something as simple as air conditioning. Even without a mic, you could hear me back there. I go into classrooms today where I cannot hear the teacher over the sound of the air conditioning. An air conditioning unit that's been working for the past 30 years, installed on a window. It is unacceptable that when it rains, and it rains a lot in South Florida, water seeps into the gym at Hialeah High, or through the windows of Palmetto Senior High School. Leaky roofs, leaky windows, unsafe conditions, technology inequities need to be resolved. They need to be resolved now. And the time is now. We have credibility, we have results. We are still experiencing all-time low, historically low federal interest rates. We have an opportunity to leverage, and this is key, leverage the declining value of the old debt service of the 1988 bond. Last time the district released bonds, 1988. As the debt service continues to decline, and it will sunset completely in 2017, we have an opportunity to stop it. And in fact, not necessarily increase taxes, but continue the bond. And that's the important feature of our recommendation, is that we're not necessarily asking for a new tax. We're simply asking to not allow the old tax to sunset. If it sunsets in 2017 and we have no solution, by the way, there is no solution other than a self-grown solution, then two things will be at play here. Our backlog of unmet maintenance needs will grow from $1.75 billion to about $2 billion in 2017, with no investment in sight from the state or the federal level. By then, we allowed the debt service to sunset into nothing. Now we will be facing tax whiplash. Now, to in fact generate $2 billion in new revenues, the tax increase that would be required would be staggering. Now is the time. Simply picking up where the current tax rate is for the bond, the old bond of 1988, continue it. I will not lie, it is true there will be a slight uptick, because for us to be credible and in fact make a dent in the deferred maintenance backlog, you need to release $200 to $400 million out in the first year. And that creates an uptick in taxes. So let me speak in a very clear way as to what the liability will be. First and second year, the liability, our best projections right now, based on the average household value right now in Miami-Dade, $180,000, $185,000, will be no greater than $9.70 per year. Over the timeline of the bond, the 30-year bond, on average will be $27 per year. That's less than $5 per $100,000 of assessed value. So for less than $5 per $100,000 of assessed value, you can generate $1.2 billion. So I think you actually get the impact, the benefit to kids. This is an investment that will dignify and honor the way kids live, the way kids learn, the way they are educated, by creating spaces, regardless of the zip code where they live, where they go to school, that represents our very best wishes for them. It's a proposal that also provides a win for teachers and principals. I do believe they ought to work in a safe, secure environment that dignifies their profession. And the third win is the community. Number one, I do believe that this proposal protects the taxpayer. If we do not do this now, it is inviting a much harsher impact a few years down the road. It also protects the taxpayer and provides a value-add benefit to the community. The Washington Economic Group recently performed an economic study on the impact of our bond referendum. And here's what we have learned. Year 1 and 2, 9,200 jobs will be created, direct jobs, as a result of this investment. The continuation of the bond over the next years will create an additional 9,400 jobs, indirect and induced jobs in our community. Now, vast majority of you are private sector folks. How many other projects can you envision in the near future that will provide that boost to unemployment in Miami-Dade, which still lags behind the state and the nation, particularly in key industries that are vital to our economic viability, particularly the construction industry, IT, technology companies? Nothing. There's nothing in the pipeline. I know right around the corner there's the Brickell development. That is pretty big, but nothing compared to economic development in every single zip code across the district. Some will say, yeah, but some schools, some neighborhoods will get some will get nothing. No. Our plan, that is available online, hits every single school. There's already a detailed needs list matched up with a budget list that clearly speaks to the need in every single school and the application and the plan and the timeline. Now, I know we need to overcome some of the doubts from the past. It's hard to let go of the sins of the past. And I know last time the board passed a bond referendum, there were issues. Yes, there was some mismanagement. We have to admit to that. But I wasn't here. Mr. Carvalho wasn't here. Certainly Susie Castillo wasn't here. This is a new team. It's a new era. It's a new day. And to say we can no longer do better for kids because 20 years ago somebody did wrong in our community is wrong. Simply wrong. Evaluate this team on a basis of what we have delivered over the past 4 years. Another element that makes this the right time, the right approach, is that back in 1988, the interest rate, as I said earlier, was about 8.5%. We're going to launch these bond series at less than half of that value. So the savings are incredible. So we're creating jobs, we're dignifying kids with better spaces, we're providing for technology equity, we're hitting every single school in terms of maintenance, replacement, renovation, or technology investments. We need to change the way technology is available in our schools. Kids now are 24/7 consumers of information and knowledge. Digital content and digital devices in highly connected schools must be a reality during our generation. It's become a moral imperative need. We have the ability to deliver on that. So we have to do it. But to deal with the naysayers, to deal with those folks that say, you know what, the community may not be able to trust because of the past, then I need the community to be part of the solution, part of the process. That is why I recommended the board unanimously approve the concept of creating a community advisory committee made up of entities with appointments from the Beacon Council, the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce, from SALAD, from the NAACP, from board members, my own appointments, from the PTA, to ensure that multiple eyes are on the plan, the timeline, the deliverables, the implementation, to ensure that in fact promises made are promises kept. Let me close on that. Promises made are promises kept. I've talked to you about financial success, about academic success, and the moral recovery of this board. What I haven't talked to you is about our successes on the capital front. And this is what we're asking you for as an investment in capital. Well, we have not had much money. But here's what I can tell you, 2 very important projects under this administration. They have been done on time, under budget. Number 1, North Dade Middle, that March 2nd, 2010 announcement. I remember going to a community town hall meeting and telling them that they had to move. We could not risk them staying in that school. The community was angry. As they were leaving the building, they felt in their hearts that somehow they were leaving that building for the last time, that we would never bring them back. A promise made is a promise kept. I told them in 2 years, we will have a school here. The very first school I visited this school year, when we began the 2012-13 school year, was North Dade Middle, a brand new school. A promise made is a promise kept. The other project is Miami High, the most iconic, most historic school in our community. Every time I mention Miami High, I see heads nodding because there are proud Stingarees all throughout our community. There are some here right now. Previous administration had earmarked $93 million into a contract to renovate and expand the school. Complex work. It's not just a matter of destroying the school or demolishing the school and building a new one. It's a historic school. So the expansion and renovation simultaneously with the kids there is incredibly complex work. Previous administration had written a contract for $93 million. We took over, we terminated that contract, fired everybody who was involved, rebid the contract. We in fact have been able to accomplish a much more expanded scope of work that's running on time, under budget for $48 million. These are the success stories we believe we have the capacity to replicate time and time again. All I need is 2 things. Number 1 is your understanding of the need, and you get it. You are the good people of Miami-Dade. Second, I need folks to actually go out there and not pitch for the passage of this bond, but simply speak about kids. If not now, then when? If not this way, then how? And can we afford to wait 1 more year? Very little keeps me up at night. But the one thing that does is the thought that somehow I could have done something dramatic for kids and didn't do it. Out of fear, political fear, economic fear, or fear for my own position. So let me leave you with the last guarantee. The last guarantee. I so believe in this that only for the second time in my superintendency, I am putting my position on the line. My position on the line. If I do not deliver on every single promise, the timeliness of the projects, on time, under budget, the community participation, the fact that 100% of these dollars will be earmarked for the private sector participation in the deliverable. You see, we're educators. We do a very good job at teaching kids math and science and reading and writing. We cannot build schools. We do not do a very good job at maintaining schools. We do not do a great job at installing technology. That's your job. So when we talk about economic development, the guarantee here is that 100% of the dollars raised will be invested in private sector partnerships to benefit our schools. So folks, thank you for your time. Thank you for your intellectual investment, at the very least in the consideration of an eminent need in our community. It's a win-win-win. Win for kids, win for teachers, a win for Greater Miami-Dade. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. As promised, we'll take some questions if anybody has any. Yes. Yes, if we could borrow that. Julio, maybe you could help out. Thanks.
Good morning. My name is Irma Becerra. I am Vice President for Engagement at FIU. Thank you for your words, Superintendent. And I'm here this morning to express to you, on behalf of our President Rosenberg, our Board of Trustees, and our entire FIU organization, our support for your bond. As you know, we have been working closely together with Miami-Dade County Public School System to raise the level of readiness of your students, that are 2/3 of the students that FIU meets every year. And we have put our money, our talent, where our mouth is. And we have expressed to our entire community that this is important for the Miami-Dade County Public School System and for our community. So I'm here to express our support.
Thank you. So that's the kind of comment I like. Great opening. I have to, put in a plug for Dr. Rosenberg. The closest highlight, alongside Dr. Padron, but Dr. Rosenberg has done so much for kids in our schools. When I talk about our performance in college readiness and career readiness, the huge increases in advanced placement and college board performance of our students, in part, is because we launched a partnership with FIU where our senior staff, so our cabinet, actually meets quarterly with FIU's leadership to design new programs, to partner, collaborate in educational matters. And the fact that you have FIU professors teaching in our high schools, and we have high school kids going to FIU to take college-level classes, by the way, at a percentage higher than any other district in the country, is remarkable. So you supporters, we are terribly indebted to the vision of Dr. Mark Rosenberg and the work that FIU continues to do. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Jill Farrell. I'm the Associate Dean of the School of Education at Barry University. And I just want to say, on behalf of our president, Sister Linda Bevilacqua, our Dean, Dr. Terry Piper from the School of Education, and the entire board, we also support the bond. And I want to say that firsthand, I can attest to, and I'm a witness to what has happened in Dade County under Superintendent Carvalho. We have a community learning partnership that Barry University is part of with a number of the schools in our feeder pattern. Miami-Dade Senior High School is one of those schools. And we have been working there diligently over the last 2 years, and it is a miraculous spectacle to behold. I was there Monday with a number of our undergraduate students because we've adopted Miami-Edison as one of our partner schools. Dr. Pablo Ortiz, who was the principal and who has now been promoted because of his incredible work there, has been working with us over the year. And I have to say that for parents who send their children to Barry University, when they heard that their children were doing field experience at Miami-Edison Senior High, there was a little bit of trepidation. Oh, you're going to Miami-Edison Senior High? Well, I have to tell you, Monday, we took children there for an orientation, our students could not believe it. The response that I have gotten since Monday has been amazing. This is a school that is a testament to Superintendent Carvalho's leadership. And I want to say that on behalf of Barry University, we also support this initiative and look forward to working in partnership with Miami-Dade County Public Schools to make it the world-class school system that it is.
Thank you very much. My connection to Barry goes back so many years. I am a graduate of Barry. I was there on a presidential scholarship. As a very poor kid, I was working my way through college, and Sister Jean O'Loughlin will forever have a special place in my heart. She, at a time I could not afford books, she loaned me $2,000 my first year of college. My tuition was paid for, but I had incredible costs. And my first year of teaching at Jackson Senior High School, it was the first big check that I had ever written, $2,000 back to Barry University. I did have a problem. I mean, at that time, there was an attendance policy. And I thought, once you graduate high school, there's no attendance. Well, nobody told me about Catholic university. You have to show up. It matters not how good your grades may be. You pass your final exams, you have to be there. And I remember having many a conversation with the dean and Sister Jean, and I will forever love that very special lady for her dedication to our community, but at a very personal level. So thank you. And as far as Edison Senior High School, please do go and visit Edison. All of us drive past Edison I-95, is that school that's almost hidden by those very costly federal requirements to put up these barriers along I-95. And I remember that was one of the 9 schools threatened with a shutdown by the state. I remember going into the school and actually saying there's a greater chance that the Queen of England will reclaim Florida than that I would shut down Edison Senior High School. And I could not get community folks to come in and participate in this dialogue and really push to improve the school. So Edison Senior is Red Raider country. The walls on the outside, on the inside, everything was red, almost too much red. And nobody would show up. So you know what I decided to do? I partnered with Craig Robbins. Everybody knows Craig Robbins, right? And we brainstormed, and he said, let's paint the school green. And sure enough, he showed up on his dime, showed up with a crew, and we painted the outside, the most prominent facade of Edison Senior High School green. The next week, we had 2,000 people in the auditorium. How in the world could we paint the school green? And I simply said, now that I have your attention, let's get to work. And in fact, Edison Senior has dramatically changed. It is the cleanest school in the entire district, safest school. You want to see great teaching, great learning, great leadership, go to Edison. It is a fantastic school. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Ruth Torres, and as a former high school dropout of Miami-Jackson Senior High.
That was before I became a teacher.
And today I'm very proud to be a business professor for Miami-Dade College, Florida International, FIU, as well as NOLA. And I'm also a parent of 3 children, 2 of which have already participated in dual enrollment programs at both Miami-Dade and FIU. And because of those perspectives, I've attended those meetings at the school board, and I've noticed the difference. And what I have observed over the last couple of years is the transparency, the leadership, the responsibility, and I believe that you've earned the respect and we see the vision that you have here. It's the right timing, that it's transparent. I looked at everything with the bond, And I'm also in support. I think you've done a great job, and thank you very much for your leadership. I've seen a complete 360 turnaround in the operations of the board, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm Howard Herring. I'm the president of the New World Symphony. Just two thoughts, a couple more softballs, but I know you'll knock them out of the park. First of all, very tight logic and personal commitment. It's an amazing statement that you just gave us, and obviously all of us are behind you, but I think it's incumbent upon us to go get this done. The second is that the New World Symphony is deeply involved in the exploration of technology. We work with a handful of schools here in Miami-Dade. That's all we can do because there's only 86 fellows. But please, this is why I'm volunteering. Use us as a model as you work forward and as we teach and watch students learn across the internet. We think there's a lot to be done there, and we're ready to help you out.
Thank you very much. I have to acknowledge, part of the evolution of our work ethic in the school district has not been done simply on the inside. The value of partnerships, 1 + 1 being in fact more than 2, is so evident. And I know we have a city commissioner from Sunny Isles Beach right here. One of the very first partnerships between the school district and the community. We have the phase 2 of that commitment where the city actually made a huge contribution to building the beautiful Sunny Isles Beach K-8. We're replicating that success story, whether it is with Armando Codina into the Doral, whether it is through the launch of new schools, new programs, magnet programs, district-managed charter schools, via partnership with the City of Hialeah and the Latin Builders Association for the construction trades in Hialeah, or the K-8 school in the Doral, or Cutler Bay, or Key Biscayne. The fact that the private sector and municipal partners are stepping in and saying, we trust, let us make a joint investment to improve the quality of education for kids today. Let us not wait. So thank you so much. As I keep looking at the room, there are people who do so much for our community every single day, and I really wanted to acknowledge that.
I would just like to say that I'm here to show our support, Sunny Isles Beach, for what you're doing. You've done a terrific job. The growth of South Miami has been in your hands, and we must continue to push ahead for our children, and this obligation bond is one way to do it. So we at Sunny Isles Beach are here in full support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Couple more questions.
Good morning. My name is Dan Yoder. I work with an organization called City of Miami. First of all, Mr. Superintendent, I really appreciate your comments this morning. I always like listening to you in the morning. It's a lot more energizing than even a few cups of coffee. So I appreciate that. My question
Starbucks will be opposing this one.
I also appreciate the support that the board and under your leadership to our organization. My question focuses on the return to the taxpayers of this coming from this investment. I was wondering if you could speak to, or if there is any projections on either the type of economic return, or academic return that we could get from this bond, and/or some of the health and safety return that we could get from some of these investments.
Sure. So I'll speak both on the financial return very quickly. I addressed some of that earlier, but also the somewhat more subjective, but still rooted in research benefit as far as academic benefits for children. From a financial benefit, look, the creation of 18,600 jobs within the very first few years of the implementation of the bond is a fact that cannot be ignored, particularly when in the horizon there isn't anything that would provide that type of economic boost. We cannot wait for anybody else to invest in our community. This is a matter of local stimulus opportunity, self-help with direct benefit to the taxpayers, to the individuals who are out there without work looking for an opportunity, and to catalyze and accelerate the economic recovery of an industry that is key to our community's economic viability, the construction trades. As far as the educational environment is concerned, just yesterday, I love flying these days because you can remain connected, right? My staff hates it because just a few years ago, they loved when I got on the plane because they knew at least for a couple of hours, I would not be sending them emails or text messages. Now, even from 37 feet up in the sky, you can remain connected. So I Googled once again the research on the educational benefits of clean, safe, secure, exciting environments. And right off the bat, 22 different articles, not old articles, 2011, 2010, a lot of literature, a lot of research out there that makes a very compelling case for the adequacy environments and the correlation of those environments to educational achievement. Look, if kids can see the board, if kids can only see the blackboard at a time when we move from the blackboard to the whiteboard to the e-board to the smart board, if kids can hear the teacher, if students hear more of the wind than the teacher's voice, they can't learn. They cannot learn. So the research is so compelling in terms of the benefits, the inducements, the opportunities brought about by clean, safe, secure environments with 21st century technology. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the technology. We cannot underestimate the power of digital environments today. You know, my daughter, I have a 21-year-old daughter, and she can be yours for a lifetime if you wish, or at least while she's in college. You know, she's not growing up, she's not accessing information or entertainment, by the way, to do it the same way. Kids today, the trick with kids is allowing them to procure knowledge and information the same way they procure entertainment. If we do that alone, they learn better. So creating digital environments that allow for personalized education, meeting the students where they are, and then carving out personal journeys at their own pace and rate, regardless of whether or not they're gifted or they have a disability, or both. Technology, digital content does that. You cannot have a single teacher in a classroom teaching in a very personalized, individualized way 25 students. But you can have a teacher, a knowledge facilitator who can navigate a digital environment that allows for the personalization of education down to every single kid. This bond will do that. Even in some of our newest schools, they're not necessarily connected schools. So this investment is as much about improving the educational environment. It is about creating safe and secure spaces, but it's also about dramatically improving technology to guarantee personalized attention to every single kid. There are some ancillary benefits as well. What the Washington Economic Group study has proven is, in addition to the 18,600 jobs, there will be many more jobs that will be created as a result of the increase in academic achievement on the part of our students, who at some point will go on to college or careers. So there's a long-term benefit in terms of employability, college and career readiness that is accrued as a result of this investment.
Good morning. My name is Gerald Payne Jr. I represent AXA Advisors, the board for United Way, as well as I'm a trustee at FIU. I'm one of those kids that he was talking about. I'm a graduate of Miami-Edison. I also went to Miami-Dade and FIU. This investment in education is one of the biggest investments that we can do. It helps kids grow up and become professionals and contribute back to the community. And I think this is something, if we don't do it now, it's just going to cost more. If you just look at the analogy, if you drive by the airport, you see the construction that's going on. We all knew the traffic problem. But if we had fixed it 10 years ago, it would have cost a whole lot less. So if we fix the problem with education today, we will all benefit. And I just want to thank you for taking on this effort.
Thank you very much, and go Red Raiders.
Okay, one more question. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Superintendent. My name is Wendell Lowry. I'm a high school director of admissions for Corinthian colleges in the Hialeah area. Actually, I'm with a few of my colleagues here, director of high school admissions from North Miami, as well as Kendall. We appreciate your comments today. We definitely support this initiative. But I must say that some of the stories that you shared about the schools definitely impact us, because we reach out to those high school seniors in some of the schools that you described. Miami Senior, for example, was just out there a few weeks ago, and I witnessed the construction that's going on out there. The historical facade is there, and the construction that's going on simultaneously along with the students attending school. So we're seeing the impact that this board has had in our schools and our community, and we continue to support. And we just like to know more ways of how we can partner with the superintendent and the board to better that partnership in the community to help our kids.
Thank you. So this is Maria Skirdo. She's my deputy chief of staff. She's really my boss. Partnership is the name of the game. So please exchange information. Educational opportunities for our kids at all levels is exactly what we're looking for. That was the last question, right?
Yes.
If I could,
Sure, absolutely.
just 2 minutes to wrap up. Number one, thank you very much once again. At a time when there's a lot of political rhetoric in our community, but particularly across the country, there's a need for rapid regression to reason. As I keep listening to the way people talk and what they say, I keep thinking that there's a better way of doing this collective work on behalf of communities. That's all we're asking for, is an opportunity to continue the good work on behalf of the community. And what better way to invest in a community than by investing in the future workforce of Miami-Dade, providing them safe, secure environments, digitally connected environments, building equity across the board, fixing once and for all the economic disparities between underserved communities in Miami-Dade and those who have done so well, providing the same level of investment for all kids, all of our citizens, regardless of the zip code where they live, where they teach, or where they go to school. This is the moral imperative and opportunity of our lifetime. We cannot waste a day, a week, or a month. That's why this question. And at a time when everybody speaks of the importance of education, I have to tell you, some folks speak so much about the fact that America is losing its place in the world, that somehow we ought to look and follow the example of Finland or Singapore for us to somehow improve our own practice. I read about what they do. I don't want to live in Singapore or Finland. Here's what I know. For the past 200 plus years, America has been the nation of innovation. And never once did we decide to follow or become a second cheap rate imitation of anybody else. Rather than the good old American tradition, we've done what I'm asking to do yet again, is we've taken the courage to reinvent ourselves into a better version of America. That's what we can do. A new architecture for a new economy, a new era of learning for the 21st century digital natives. It's in your hands. But again, I'm not concerned. These are friends. You believe in kids, you believe in community, you believe in Miami-Dade. So thank you so much once again.
Superintendent, thank you. Thank you very much. Just two things. One, on behalf of the Beacon Council and if I may, the United Way, I also want to acknowledge and thank school board member Carlos Carvalho and the newly elected Susie Castillo, as well as Vice Mayor Louis Thaler from Sunny Isles Beach and Mayor Shelley Stanswick from Palmetto Bay for being here today for this very important presentation. And just before you go, Superintendent, we have a gift for you, and if I could invite Mr. Mogul and Ms. Abbas to help me present that, and then we'll let you guys go on for your day.
I don't mind being.
Thank you. Thank you. Can we bring up the... Sure, absolutely.
It's okay.